Here we are back again with Armageddon Part 9. Reiterating that the bottom line to all of God's measuring His creation, the judgment is that the Jews are doomed. Now, continuing with the horror of the Grenfell Tower, the fire in the council flat in Grenfell Towers was a Talmudic Jewish Freemason burnt offering to Lucifer. The map shows the positions of the sun and moon at the reported times of the fire. The area within 32,633,642 square miles, the 326 meaning to be alive again, live again, recover life, resurrection. Hebrew 33:64 is to awake, awaken. So you are saying that these poor victims will resurrect. 326 and 206 being the length of the four legs in miles there, 20665.3. 206 proclaim Christ is alive forevermore to the farthest bounds, uttermost parts of the earth. They will rise again. It was a Jewish sacrifice by fire to their god Moloch. This sacrifice by fire is called a holocaust. Quoting Matthew 27:50, Jesus, when he had cried again with a loud voice, yielded up the ghost. And behold, the veil of the temple was rent in twain from the top to the bottom, and the earth did quake, and the rocks rent, and the graves were opened, and many bodies of the saints which slept arose, and came out of the graves after his resurrection, and went into the holy city, and appeared unto many. Now when the centurion and they that were with him, watching Jesus, saw the earthquake, and those things that were done, they feared greatly, saying, truly, this was the Son of God. April the 5th, 33 AD, in Australia, April the 6th, Julian Day, 1733206.55278. At 3:16 a.m. UTC. Now this spectacular event was recorded by Pontius Pilate, who interviewed the Jewish guards he had ordered placed around the tomb to prevent the priests from saying the body was taken when the Roman guards took a bribe and allowed the disciples to take the body. It was the Jewish guards that fled in panic. Now only when this occurs again will the world wake up. The open sepulchre meant I had gone somewhere, which is true, but where? The date was April 5th, 33 AD. To be resurrected requires conception, conceived within the womb of the most royal woman, Daphne Golightly, in Australia, April the 6th, 1943. Australia ahead of time from Jerusalem. The resurrection was witnessed by the Pharisee soldiers, specifically placed watching the tomb. But suddenly angels were reported and a brilliant light when the tomb opened. This was such a serious matter that if a soldier fell asleep it was a death penalty, let alone run away in panic declaring, he is risen, as was recorded by Pontius Pilate in a letter to Rome, as recorded and available today in the APOC'ALYPSE volume. Now the following is an excerpt from the report of Pontius Pilate in the APOC'ALYPSE volume. This is permission to bury Jesus of Nazareth. Quoting, I am Joseph of Arimathea, replied he, and am come to beg of you upon bended knees the permission to bury Jesus of Nazareth. Your prayer is granted, I said to him, and I ordered Manlius to take some soldiers with him to superintend the interment, lest it should be profaned. A few days after the sepulchre was found empty, his disciples proclaimed all over the country that Jesus had risen from the dead, as he had foretold. This created more excitement even than the crucifixion, and to its truth I cannot say for certain, but I have made some investigation of the matter, so you can examine for yourself, see if I am in fault, as Herod represents. Joseph buried Jesus in his own tomb. Whether he contemplated his resurrection or calculated to cut him another, I cannot tell. The day after he was buried, one of the priests came to the praetorian and said they were apprehensive that his disciples intended to steal the body of Jesus and hide it, and then make it appear that he had risen from the dead, as he had foretold, and of which they were perfectly convinced. I sent him to the captain of the royal guard, Malchus, to tell him to take the Jewish soldiers and place as many around the sepulchre as were needed. Then, if anything should happen, they could blame themselves and not the Romans. When the great excitement arose about the sepulchre being empty, I felt a deeper solicitude than ever. I sent for Malchus, who told me he had placed his lieutenant, Ben Isham, with 100 soldiers around the sepulchre. He told me that Isham and the soldiers were very much alarmed at what had occurred there that morning. I sent with this man Isham, who related to me as near as I can recollect the following circumstances. He said that about the beginning of the fourth watch, the fourth watch would have begun at 3 a.m. So at the beginning of the fourth watch, he saw a soft and beautiful light over the sepulchre. He at first thought the women had come to embalm the body of Jesus, as was their custom, but he could not see how they had gotten through the guards. While these thoughts were passing through his mind, behold, the whole place was lighted up, and there seemed to be crowds of the dead in their grave clothes. All seemed to be shouting and filled with ecstasy, while all around and above was the most beautiful music he had ever heard, and the whole air seemed to be full of voices praising God. At this time there seemed to be a reeling and swimming of the earth, so that he turned so sick and faint that he could not stand on his feet. He said the earth seemed to swim from under him, and his senses left him, so that he knew not what did occur. I asked him if he could not have been mistaken as to the light. Was it not day that was coming in the east? He said at first he thought of that, but as a stone's cast it was exceedingly dark, and then he remembered it was too early for day. I asked him if his dizziness might not have come from being awakened and getting up too suddenly, as it sometimes had the effect. He said he was not, and had not been asleep all night, as the penalty was death for him to sleep on duty. He said he had let some of the soldiers sleep at a time. Some were asleep then. I asked him how long the scene lasted. He said he did not know, but he thought it was nearly an hour. He said it was hid by the light of the day. I asked him if he went to the sepulchre after he had come to himself. He said no, because he was afraid that just as soon as relief came, they all went to their quarters. I asked him if he had been questioned by the priest. He said he had. They wanted him to say it was an earthquake and that they were asleep, and offered him money to say that the disciples came and stole Jesus. But we saw no disciples. He did not know that the body was gone until he was told. I asked him what was the private opinion of those priests he had conversed with. He said that some of them thought that Jesus was no man, that he was not a human being, that he was not the Son of Mary, that he was not the same that was said to be born of the Virgin in Bethlehem, that the same person had been on earth before with Abraham and Lot, and at many times and places. it seemed to me that if the Jewish theory be true, these conclusions are correct, for they are in accord with this man's life, as is known and testified by both friends and foes. For the elements were no more in his hands than the clay in the hands of the potter. He could convert water into wine. He could change death into life, disease into health. He could calm the seas, still the storms, call up fish with a silver coin in its mouth. Now I say, if he could do all these things, which he did, and many more, as the Jews all testify, and it was doing these things that created this enmity against him, he was not charged with criminal offences, nor was he charged with violating any law, nor of wronging any individual in person. And all these facts are known to the thousands as well by his foes as by his friends. I am almost ready to say, as did Leonard at the cross, truly this was the Son of God. That's the end of the quote from Pilate's report. Now, April the 5th, 33 AD, the sunrise was at 5:26 and the sunset at 18:01 in the evening, risen for 755 minutes. The graves were opened because the Comforter had come. In the Old Testament they had no Comforter. You can read Ecclesiastes 4:1, Lamentations 1:9 and 1:16. The Comforter had come. You can read about him in John 14:16, 14:26, John 15:26 and John 16:7. Now when you add the chapter and verse numbers of each of those 7 verses with the word Comforter, they total 67.54, which is the area of the Shroud of Turin, the larger piece, 6,754.5 square inches. And Yahweh is saying that soon this will reoccur. So this is the signing off of Pilate's report. He ends with, "Now, noble sovereign, this is as near the facts in the case as I can arrive at, and I have taken pains to make the statement very full, so that you may judge of my conduct upon the whole, as I hear Antipater has said many hard things of me in this matter, with the promise of faithfulness and good wishes to my noble sovereign. I am your obedient servant, Pontius Pilate." And of course, this letter of Pilate backs up the biblical account of the events of the life, ministry, crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus. And Yah says, "My judgment is all unrighteous will be cast off the earth. All Jews, Freemasonry, governments not recognizing myself as God are doomed." Yahweh-Jesus, Brian Leonard, Golightly-Marshall.